Well, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start, and as people join us, I'll let them join us. We will have this on our website as well, so we want to make sure that the community also knows. Let me start off by saying I'm June Younger. I'm the coordinator here at the Commerce City Chamber of Commerce, and today we have South Adams County Fire Department Fire Chief Kevin Vincel with us. We are so thankful, Kevin, that you could be with us. Let us know what is going on with the fire department during this COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, well, I don't even know where to start, but I'll do my best. It has been a whirlwind since the pandemic started. We have had to switch our gear completely in the department. When this first broke out, we were lucky South Adams was ahead of the game. We took it, even though personally, or even what you would hear around, nobody thought, this is no worse than the flu. And a lot of people could say that that's the truth, but the way we looked at it, it's an added thing to all the other dangers, that we are experiencing each day. So March 11th, we decided to send everybody home that was at the HQ building, and then start with what we call a DECO team, designated infection control officer team, to start the process on how we were going to deal with COVID. And that was a very quick put together team that started to look for innovative ways to battle with this pandemic. Well, at that point in time, it wasn't considered a pandemic yet, but the news was coming out that we would have, possibly millions of deaths, and we didn't know much about the virus. So we had to switch a lot of our attention to how we were going to deal with this. Well, about a week later, our department, along with every other agency, whether it's police, fire, medical, hospitals, as you all know, the way that we were responding to this, because it was an airborne disease that you could contract very easily, we had to start beefing up our systems as far as how we respond on medical calls. Now, that said, I'm going to go through a little bit of history. So when I joined on the department in 1995, we rubber gloves were just starting to become, well, if you want to wear them, that's good, but you don't have to. So I can remember in 1995 doing extrication and really not wearing what we have today. And our fire gear at that time, the dirtier the better. And throughout the years, things have changed. For instance, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer in, when was that? 2014. And that was due to our practices that we used to do with, the carcinogens and everything else, that it was a real threat. Cancer was a real threat in our fire service. And so the one thing that never really occurred to the emergency services was the wearing of masks. And I always wondered that. About 2 years ago, I was talking to my deputy chiefs, and I said, why don't we wear masks to every call? We wear all this gear for fires to protect us from cancer and so on and so forth, but we don't wear any masks. And this was a couple of years ago, and they said, well, the cost and so on and so forth. So, in past history, again, we would go to we'll say get toned on a sick party, difficulty breathing or something of that nature. We would go in there and we wouldn't wear a mask. You get them in the back of an ambulance, you'd put an IV in them, you get them there. Exposure to tuberculosis is still a big deal. I think tuberculosis kills a heck of a lot more people than even COVID does. And tuberculosis is very hard to kill, and it stays around a while, and it always baffled me why we didn't. Anyway, as we moved forward and this pandemic broke out, the first thing that everybody, once they heard that it was airborne, that we were worried about was wearing face masks. And then obviously you can entry point through the eyes and so on and so forth. So our department was faced with, okay, now we're going to implement, getting this up to speed on how we respond. Now, South Adams is, I think, in my opinion, when we talk about taxpayer friendly, if you will, we have a private ambulance company, and how this works is, if you are a fire-based EMS company, they charge you when you go out for a call, and they're also paying for the fire-based EMS. Our taxpayers do not pay for our contracted ambulance, which is Northland. But if you do call the ambulance, obviously you get a bill, the insurance picks up, so on and so forth. That helped us tremendously with COVID, because we don't believe on sending a big fire engine on every single medical call like a lot of these others. We want to take our resources to the proper call where it is needed. So we implemented a squad unit. If you may have seen it around, it looks like a brush truck, but it's got EMS equipment. So we implemented our squad unit along with Northland Ambulance, and we started to run on calls where we had to be gloved, masked, gown, the whole bit, to protect us. So where I'm getting at with all this is, you can see how history is, when I say things are going to always be different now, but they were different after 9/11. It took a while for this country to rebound from that. Airports are still not the same they used to be. And as we continue through this, neither will, emergency services ever be the same. So this different that you see with fire departments experiencing a large amount of costs and protection equipment for medical calls is something that you're going to see. So where I'm getting at is the monies that this costed is still evolving as we speak. So what we do is our DECO team sought out all kinds of any avenue they could get to get masks and gloves and gowns. The problem is the federal government, FEMA, was stepping in and taking any kind of supplies that are around, and it was going directly to the hospitals, which, hey, that's the number one priority, no doubt. However, it was something that was affecting our fire agency, because we were at one point in time, we were like every other agency, just scraping to try to get masks and everything else. Now here's how it affects the inside of our organization. So I believe, and I'm going to brag about South Adams, because we did such a fantastic job getting on this right away. Knock on wood, we've had one COVID positive firefighter through this whole pandemic, and that is fantastic. It's unfortunate, don't get me wrong, but it's fantastic that we've only had one. Northland Ambulance has had, I believe, two. So in the realm of things, the way we handled our response was top notch. We took it very serious, because if we have a person that's infected within our organization, we have to take that person and all the crew that they were there, and they all have to go on basically a 14-day mini vacation, if you will, and they're quarantined. And we also set up our Station 5 with cots and a way that we could quarantine, where if they didn't want to go home to their families, they would quarantine at Station 5. So we set that up. And we also, Maria Carbajal was a big part of this. We set up a food distribution for our firefighters. We're the only fire department, I believe, in the metro area that did this, and it's a fantastic. So what we did is we set up a food distribution with Shamrock Foods, where we have a team that's directed by Maria that goes and picks up food for our firefighters to keep them out of the grocery stores. I believe this is another thing that we did that helped us tremendously in for the exposure control. So a food supply gets picked up and it gets delivered to the stations. It's all controlled with social distancing, so on and so forth. So where I'm getting at is our objective was to get less exposure as we could for the firefighters throughout this pandemic. And we're still doing it, by the way. I think we're going to, do this for quite some time. The district did pay for that food in the meantime. It was a low cost. I mean, we're looking at, for 2 months supply of food for 5 stations and 66 firefighters, about $2,000. But it really went a long way. And I'll tell you why. Like, somebody could say, well, $2,000 is a lot of money. Well, if you get a whole crew infected with COVID, you're talking probably anywhere from $14,000 to $18,000 in overtime or extra hours worked bringing in another crew. Then you could possibly have to shut down or brown out a station basically until that crew can come back. So then it affects the response to the citizens. Our call volume actually went down, but it wasn't like, oh, that was a relief. Our call volume went down, but the difficulty breathings and the possible COVID positive patients, that type of call skyrocketed. So it was really weird. What happened is through the pandemic, fires, accidents, and we still had some fires and accidents, that stuff never stops. But the weird thing about it is everybody that went into quarantine, we didn't get as many calls as we thought we were going to get a boom in calls, and they actually went down. But the response to the COVID patients went up, or any difficulty breathings or anybody with a sniffle, basically. So when we started going into the COVID, anybody that had any symptoms, they were calling the fire department and ambulance immediately, get me to the hospital. And then what they did is they got the message out that said, hey, unless you're, really in need of getting to a hospital, please, there's a 99% chance that you will be okay from this. But if you do get to a certain thing, then call 911. So that getting that word out helped tremendously. So setting up our deco team, and then getting into ordering supplies and then a food supply and keeping our firefighters in the stations as much as possible. We canceled PR events. We canceled, just like everybody else did. And we really focused our attention on response in our administration division. The administration division is something that it is the wheel power behind turning the wheels of the organization. If you shut down the administration, the department cannot run. So our IT was able to set us all up with working from home, and it actually worked out very well. Some of us worked a heck of a lot more at home because you're so focused and you don't have any distractions. And it was really nice to see a lot of the what I call the team come together and really just really productive on dealing things with COVID. One of the big things was PR with Maria. I never thought that public relations would be such an integral part of COVID. PR isn't an integral part anyway of an organization, but Maria was very important key in getting information out on COVID, letting people know, that, there was a drive-by birthday thing, and we're doing them now. But when they first started, we're like, no, we're still in this, when that 2-week really sensitive time, we were like, no, we can't do any of that. So PR was an integral part on getting food, hooking up with different distributions. Donations was a big thing because at one point in time, we were hurting just like everybody else. I mean, we were thinking about how are we going to make, these masks last? How are we going to make, how we're going to keep our firehouses clean? How we're going to keep the fire engines, decontaminated, so on and so forth. Do I believe that the pandemic caused a tremendous amount of fear? Absolutely. But you still have to play by the rules and play the game. Whatever, you got to take your personal opinions, set them aside. I mean, I have my own personal opinions, but when it comes to the organization and the country we live in, you have to play by the rules as much as it hurts, as much as I disagree or agree with things. We had to keep running the organization by the rules. I'm a very by the book, by the rules person. But, PR was a very integral part of that on making sure that the public knew what we were doing step by step. And it really turned out really well. In turn, we were able to get, the public was seeing that, oh man, the South Adams, needs the donations. And we got a lot of donations. We got a lot of anything from Clorox wipes to masks to, I mean, you name it. We it was starting to come, and that really, really helped our organization out. We have to think about in the future, because like I said earlier, this will never change anymore. I mean, we're always going to be wearing masks from here on out. We'll always be wearing, gowns or, I mean, it's just the way it's going to be. The medical field and EMS field, and it's forever changed as we know it. Even if there's a vaccine that comes out, it's still going to be, it's not like we're just going to go back to the way it used to be. And I relate this to 9/11. When 9/11 happened in an airport, think about this. You have to take off your shoes. You got to go through metal detectors. You can't, carry on certain things in your luggage. This is going to be the same way. It's sad to me that it's a reaction instead of a proactive approach, but there's nothing, none of us can do. So that when I'm talking about the reaction approach is in 9/11, the way fire departments respond and how Homeland Security was set up, this is going to be another thing that will always be part of South Adams. Now, the problem of this is the cost. So far, our costs are upwards of $100,000 in a couple months of COVID. And some of those costs are concurring, some of them won't be. But that part there scares me a little bit, just because, it's going to be a new norm that we have to budget for. Our main emphasis is to protect the citizens, have a great service, regardless, because COVID isn't the only thing that's out there. In 5 years from now, it's going to be a distant memory, but who knows what we're faced with then. So firefighters respond to 52 different types of jobs. So now you can add one more. Now it's 53. COVID will be a type of job we respond on. Infectious disease control. Now we've always practiced body isolation, but now it's going to be a little bit different, and there's a cost behind that. So the way that this affected South Adams as a whole was, definitely by budget. Also, we had to hold off. I've decided to hold off on a lot of our capital projects, and because I don't know what the future holds. I was watching the news last night, and Gallagher could drop to 5.18% for residential assessment rate. If that would happen, our department would be decimated. I mean, it would be decimated. I don't know, that's a $3 million cut. So you will most likely see our district board approve of de-Gallagherization on the November ballot. That doesn't raise anybody's taxes. It doesn't cost any more money. It just secures that residential assessment rate, because if it keeps going down, which it's horrible, it's going to decimate a lot of fire districts, especially in this time of day with the COVID and all the other things. The fire service, it's not we're a very cost-effective service, and it's a very much needed service, more now than even, in this pandemic shows that, we were, fire agencies and EMS were an integral part, and the amount of money that it's costing to get through this and in the future is going to be something that we all, need to watch for. And, I'm not here to, get votes or, whatever. I'm just here to tell you that please, when it comes time, support, because we have worked so hard through this, deal. I mean, when everybody was at home and this and that, our firefighters, myself, PR, we were all out there, trying to make a difference. And in fact, what we decided to do is the community was so awesome in Commerce City. Now, I've lived here all my life. Commerce City is dear to my heart. And it's just amazing to see whether it's down south or up north. Now, I come from down south. I've lived on Titchie Boulevard, and, it's always has a special heart. I don't care if you're south, north, it doesn't matter to me. But to see the community as they did, whether it was, new area, old area, to see them come together and donate things to the fire department was just cool. And the recent thing we did is we wanted to give back to the community. And Maria and some folks set up a food drive and food and supply drive for our senior citizen community, and it was absolutely outstanding. We set up, if there was people delivering, I mean, they pulling up and just giving anything that they can. When you got antibacterial soap that you can't find anywhere, and you get some lady just drive up and give you a whole pack of it. It was just cool to see the community really come together. And Community Choice Credit Union was a big part of it as well. And it was really neat to see, two agencies come together and provide something to give back to the community and help. We're the only organizations around that I can tell that did something like this, the magnitude it was. It kind of sucks it wasn't on the news or anything like that, but they provided so much for Connor Estates, Madonna Plaza, and some of the other seniors with supplies and everything through COVID. So through it all, I think as an organization of South Adams, with all the news and the doom and gloom and and everything like that, it was kind of cool to see something like that be like a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. So it was very, very neat to see. Really, really good to see this come alive. So as far as our future, it's all going to depend on I really truly believe the after effect of this COVID could be far worse than the virus. It's scary times we live in, but as history shows, you go back to World War II or the Great Depression or even the Spanish flu or World War I or the Civil War. There's always something that America has to do to strive to get through things and show that we are the best place in the world. And this is just another thing that I think we'll get through, but there's just going to have to be some sacrifices made, and those sacrifices will be on our side. That this is going to have a cost associated no matter what. This is going to cost taxpayers somewhere somehow on to deal with this. And then as far as the firefighters, it's an extra danger. Like I said, I had kidney cancer. Okay. It's funny, through COVID, all that stuff is kind of forgotten right now, but heart disease and cancer are the leading causes of death in the fire service. In fact, the number one leading cause is suicide. So that stuff is not going to go away, and COVID is not going to bring the virus, in my opinion, is not going to bring us down, but it is going to be this added deal that we have to endure forever, and it's not going to change. And that's what really worries me, is the future of not only for fire departments, but for everybody on what happens next, and that's the big question now. So did I want to get on here and say we were status quo? Absolutely not. We're not anywhere near status quo. Things are changing all the time. In fact, we purchased laboratory ovens so we can put our masks in the oven and sanitize them so we can reuse them. So there's always innovative things we're looking at to help us get through this, but knowing that it's not going to go away. It's something that's just going to be an added deal on to the fire service itself. So that's what's going on in South Adams. There is good things to this pandemic. The community has been awesome. Our partners, the Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, Community Choice, all the partners and everybody. I mean, it's been so fantastic to see, out of all the doom and gloom, that how, these, people come together and, continue to work to get through this. And we will get through this. I mean, there's no doubt. But, the scars it'll leave, well, that's just we're going to have to get through. So that is what's going on at South Adams. Again, we have a nice, healthy crew that's still responding. We have 5 stations that are always up and running. We've never had to brown out one or close one. They've been getting the job done. We've had some significant fires. We've had some very significant accidents. And they are still training. As far as our admin, we are still meeting. I went to a phase 1 back to work deal. So we've gotten people back into the office, and, you know, we are cruising, man. We are still running, you know, like I say, 100 miles an hour, and I got a great team. The team of people that we have at South Adams is absolutely fantastic. And, you know, there's some things in the past that we tried out and didn't work, but I always say, if you don't swing at a pitch, you'll never hit a ball. So that's what we're doing, and I'm proud to be part of the organization, and I can't be proud enough of how we've handled the pandemic.
Well, that is just wonderful. I mean, I am also a lifelong resident here in Commerce City, and I know how it is here. We've always been kind of that small hometown feel, and just hearing about the community coming together and helping all of you, and you helping back. I mean, you didn't have to do that. So tell us now, you know, how are you with your PPE stuff?
So we try to, you know, we're trying to get our supplies up. You know, we're trying to do it in like 6-month increments, if you will. So we're trying to get enough supplies to last 6 months, and during that 6 months, trying to keep that up. That said, it's very difficult. Uh, these laboratory ovens, and then we went to what we call a P100 mask. The P100 mask it goes over your nose and mouth, and it has 2 canisters here. And the filters inside those canisters are very hardy, and you can sanitize them for, man, I mean, I think, don't quote me on this, but up to 1,000 uses. So that we are trying to do innovative things like that, you know, so we don't have to keep buying the N95s. Now, the N95s is hint why they say N95, it's 95% protection. So, you know, not just COVID. I got to tell a kind of a funny story. I keep getting, man, COVID's so contagious because the spores are so small. And I'm like, well, I don't remember seeing the flu flying around. They're all small. So with that said, you know, the P100s are a lot better fit, and they offer, I think, like 98, 99% protection. So we're trying to beef up on those types of things. Gowns, it's crazy. It's really neat to see how the folks in our department are innovative. Instead of trying to buy gowns, because it's almost impossible, believe it or not, they're using a type of raincoat. Because the raincoat, you can take it off and wash it, sterilize it, and then wear it over and over and over. So these are some of the things that it's really neat to see some of our folks do this. Couple of our folks also designed, and it's in use today, an atomized disinfectant sprayer. And it hooks up to one of our air bottles on our air packs, and it sanitizes large areas. And the sanitizer, we were able to get our hands on a non-carcinogenic sanitizer that we've been spraying. We got a pretty good supply of that. So some of these innovative things that we've been doing are pretty awesome. What I do worry about, though, is all of us, right? You know, we're using hand sanitizer, we're using soap, we're using wiping off the counters. What I really worry about is I worry that our immune systems, we're going to try to get so cleanly because you need good and bad bacteria. We're going to start to get sick because we don't have immunities built up. And that worries me around the firehouse too, because we're treating this as like a surgical room, if you will. And although, like I said, we got to play by the rules, I still worry. And then all the chemicals we're using, putting on our hands and wiping things off, are we going to come into another deal if cancer starts to rise in the fire service again? And maybe, you know, so some of these things worry me, that hopefully we're not trying to solve a problem and getting ourselves into another one future on down the road. So, but the supplies are good. You know, we've gotten donations, you know, for hand sanitizers and soaps and stuff like that. You know, without the community, without you all, without, you know, Commerce City being who we are, I don't know where we would be. We're very, very thankful for the citizens and the organizations that we're a part of that has assisted us. It has been absolutely, it just warms my heart.
It is really great. If anyone has a question, please just go ahead and unmute yourself. But I will ask another question. You were talking about how the calls actually had went down during this time that we were all kind of hunkered down at our homes. But now that it's starting to reopen, what are you seeing?
You know, accidents have gone up. I think with the roads not being as crowded, people are driving way too fast. Fires, we were worried about fires, so we started training during the pandemic that any fire we went on, we assumed it was occupied, which is, we do that anyway, right? But we kind of know if you go to a house, a fire, let's say a house fire, and it's Monday through Friday at 11 or 11 a.m., if there's somebody in there, usually they're out, or if there's, because most people are at work, but we always, act as if it's occupied. However, the COVID threw us into a different category, because if we, would go, God forbid, on an apartment fire or multi-tenant fire, or, even a house fire, and, you get somebody that comes out and says, hey, somebody's still in there, more than likely that's the case. And that's what really scared us. So we had to, our training, amped up a little bit on responding to this. And so as phase one started to release, we did, our calls started to climb back up a little bit on, accidents and so on and so forth. One of the grim things about this virus that we saw a spike in was suicides. Definitely suicides, and M1s, and just, and a couple stabbings. We had a shooting, stuff like that. And I think that is something that, when you're at home in quarantine and nothing to do, violence had a tendency to go a little bit up. Now, I'm not speaking for the police department. I'm just saying, on kind of what we responded on. So you did see a shift in things, the norm of what we responded on, or what we were used to, kind of shifted a little bit. Some of those priorities went, to a, 2-3 priority, when obviously COVID was one, and so on and so forth. So we did see a little bit of a change, but it's going to be interesting when they open up the state, completely, so on and so forth. So
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I just want to, as a board member, I want to thank Kevin because I'm a board member for the fire department, and he's always on top of situations. He has great leadership, and I want to thank you for your leadership. And he is a forward-thinking person and wants to always be on top of everything that is the best thing to do for the department. And I also want to congratulate him, because today he is attending his virtual graduation at 4 o'clock. And he's got his degree in fire science. So I think that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. In fact, I just got a phone call when I got on here. I was confirmed I got Outstanding Student of the Year. So I was nominated, and they was only picking one, and I was pretty happy to see. They called me right before this meeting, so I got to see what that's all about. But I'm pretty humbled, and thank you very much. And right back at you, Deborah. The board has been so supportive, and when you're talking about monies in a department, and I go to the board and say, hey, we're going to need this, and this is the budget category, and man, they're so supportive. And again, without the board, being supportive of the organization, it just does not go anywhere. So right back at you. It's very thankful to have you all, and very supportive, and getting things done. And it was such a smooth process. I mean, especially going to this Zoom thing. It's so different, to handle things virtually, and here we are. It's just neat to see. Very nice to see.
I don't have a question either, but I want to agree with you, Chief, that we do need to keep our immune system high, because as people get out and about again, those viruses are still out there, and our body has got to be prepared to take care of itself.
Absolutely. And, and that's kind of, you got to play by the rules, and, you try to, do the best you can. But there's a part of me that is saying, if we continue to always be the sterile surgery kind of environment, I wonder what happens in the future. But for now, we are, even in our firehouses, we're masked up, so on and so forth. But hopefully that will not be a norm. I hope we get a little bit looser on some of that stuff, because it's very, very hard to handle all business virtual. For instance, AdCom, going to them meetings, and, budget. We're having our, I start the 2021 budget, and I think Monday we have our first meeting to get that going. And it's just tough, but, I hope is face-to-face communication eventually eases, and we can at least go back to that. So, I pay attention to two different things. Of course, the United States coronavirus deal, and then also the IHME model. And I'm just thankful that at the beginning, this was going to kill millions of people. As I said, that's scary. When you start seeing health officials start saying them kind of numbers, it is scary. But I'm glad that it, whether it was social distancing or it just wasn't as bad as they thought, but it's still bad. It's an added thing to the flu and everything else we do. But I'm glad it's not as bad as they thought, because, boy, I tell you what, you talk about martial law and all out chaos. I think, I can't speak, my grandpa was a B-24 nose gunner in World War II, and they lived through, the Depression and, things like that. I just never thought in our era with our economy that we would be that close to just an all out, devastation to the country. So it's going to take a while to pick it back up, but I'm just thankful it's not as bad as it was. And that's even organizationally speaking, there's still some ramifications out of this that could decimate our fire department, and Gallagher's one of them. Man, we just keep trucking along, and, no matter what, we're just going to provide the citizens with the best possible service we can.
Not going into like any HIPAA laws or anything, but how is that one firefighter and the two Northland ambulance employees doing now?
They're great. Thankfully, they all had pretty mild to moderate, but nothing. The one firefighter, I think he's, we have to put him on quarantine for a certain amount of days, but I think he's coming up to come back here soon. And I know the two ambulance, NGA ambulance, they're back to work now. So yeah, again, this virus is so weird. Some people it hits hard, and others, asymptomatic, or they show very little, which leads me to believe that more people out there probably have been exposed, including, could be any of us, and you just didn't know. Thankfully they've had mild conditions. And in fact, the surrounding fire departments, there's some departments to the west of us that had quite a few. I think one department had, I want to say 12, and all of them have recovered. And, and it was weird. Some of them just had, fever, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. But some of them just had, they just lost their sense of smell and taste. And then that was it. And they didn't even know. So some of them have got into doing the antigen test, or the antibody test. I'm sorry. We elected not to, because it's only 85%. But when they do get that upwards, it's going to be interesting to see, the actual herd immunity that's occurred. I think it's a lot bigger than we think. So that's what we're hoping around the fire field as well. I think that this virus has been in our country for a lot longer than when we went into quarantine. I think, in my opinion, December, January, it's probably been here. And I would assume most of us have, given that it's that contagious, we're probably exposed a time or two. Whether we did get, contracted or not is one thing, but I think I've been here a while. So, but they're doing good. The symptoms have been mild, and they're doing well. Question. I'm glad to report that news.
That is good news. Anything else that you'd want to just let the community know now that we are moving forward, hopefully a lot quicker too?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that's going to be on our mind now is to de-Gallagherize and keep our residential assessment rate at 7.15. In order to keep up so I asked for, or did the board, we had 2 mill levy increases in 5 years, and thankfully for the citizens in that, but it was voted through. But we shouldn't have to go for a mill levy increase. I'm not going to say ever, but it is going to be a long time. But if Gallagher drops to 5.18% and we take a $3 million cut, I mean, we would be on the brink of laying off firefighters and shutting down stations. It's just, you can't, and legislation doesn't seem to be fixing it. So our only hope is to go to the voters and de-Gallagherize it. Like I said, it doesn't raise taxes. It doesn't, it just keeps that residential assessment rate there. So, the businesses are what's really hurting with Gallagher. But yet the residents are the ones that kind of vote more on it, and they're not as affected as the businesses. And just to keep that Gallagher going, so we can continue this service, because once this pandemic is over, we're going to be on a very I think, how do I say this, maybe sensitive kind of level, where if anything happens, this is what we're thinking about, in the future, is COVID's all gone, and let's say something else. Maybe it's not a virus. Maybe it's some type of threat to our water system, or we as the fire department are going to have to adapt. And whatever equipment and that, no matter what, we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have people to respond. So when you call 911, you're not put on hold, and I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is. We respond to so many different things, and we want to keep that level of service. And that's the biggest thing on our mind right now, is keeping that RAR, getting the voters in November to approve that RAR to stay the same. That's probably the biggest thing moving forward, because without funding, man, I really don't know where we're going to be. I really don't. We have a lot of capital, not a lot, but we have, capital improvements, which we want to do. We want to, I'll tell you an inside deal. What we want to do is we want to, if you guys know where Station 1 is by the old high school, where the old high school used to be, there's a white building over there. That's our maintenance. We're actually, instead of building new fancy firehouses, and we don't have a firehouse on the west side of the tracks, we were going to remodel Station 1 and put crews in there. And it's a great, because of the dog track getting developed, and having a unit on the west side and the core of the city, and it would really balance the city out as a whole. Because like I said, I could care less whether it's south or north. We just, we provide the best service. But things like that is what we have in our future for our capital. And if Gallagher hits us, and we get that on the ballot and people vote it down, stuff like that is what worries me. That's going to have to get canceled, and we're just going to have to go to a bare minimum deal. And I don't know. I mean, if that Gallagher keeps dropping, I mean, that's how we get our money, is property tax. And if the RAR keeps going down, we're in some deep, deep trouble. So we collect our money on property tax, not sales tax. And our mill levy is 14.75. It's not the highest. It's not the lowest. It's a mediocre, but it's a great position to be in to, provide the citizens with a growing community and everything else. So we talk about up north and down south, but down south has growth as well. The dog park that's going to get developed is going to boost the occupancy of citizens down there in that area quite a bit. So we got to prepare for that. So sorry about my spiel on that, but that's one of the biggest things we have to look for in the future.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, what is response times now versus, say, if you have to cut some firefighters from their jobs?
We are in between a 5 to 7 minute response time. Now that is not including from when you pick up the phone and dial 911, it has to go to AdCom, and then it has to go to a process, and then the dispatch and stuff like that. But the minute our firefighters get the call, we have a strict 60-second in the day, 90-second at night to get out of that door and to that call within 5 to 7 minutes. And that's 5 stations that are strategically placed to do that now. If we were to have to cut, we have done some models, even cutting one station could bump those up to about 12 minutes. Now, we had an accident a while back that involved some children. And one of the folks that called 911 was a state patrol, an off-duty state patrol. And he says, oh, when I dialed, it was the most horrific thing you've seen, blah, blah, blah. He said, when I dialed 911, he says, it took you guys forever. It seemed like it took you guys forever to get there. We were there in 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. And he had told me, he says, I couldn't imagine, anything more than that, and then so when I think about if your house is on fire or you're in dire need and you have a 12-minute response time, that's going to seem like a lifetime. So yeah, it's going to affect it a lot, a tremendous amount. And I don't want to see that happen. So hopefully we can get this. And with Gallagher, the state legislation is not going to pass anything right now. And the way that Tabor works, it just keeps ratcheting down. So our only hope is to just de-Gallagherize so it doesn't keep ratcheting down. It's funny too, because if your residential assessment rate goes down to that, you really don't see a big savings. But collectively throughout the county, we see a big hit. So.
Well, does anyone else have any questions for Kevin? Seeing none, I just want to thank you, Kevin, for being with us, for being a chamber member. We value all of our firefighters and all our safety personnel out there in our community. We just want to thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I love Commerce City, and I appreciate everybody's support. And from the chamber to the Rotary to Community Choice Credit Union's always there, no matter what we're doing, and to see these partners and to see, you all, just still keeping these organizations alive and in good standings. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, just to see June in the background, I see Gene and Al Klein, and they were just seeing that stuff right there, keeping that tradition going. I just absolutely love this place, and that's why I live here and work here and never left here.
Totally agree with you on that part. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and check back with us for next week, and we will see you then. Thank you all.